Howdy folks, Presto DiBaggio here, awesome artist, remarkable writer, and undaunted luminary of my time. Today we're going to do the start of the new year, or New Year's resolution video. So, last year I set 3 resolutions. I believe they were finish that really big Challenger foundation piece I was working on. I was in the coloring stages for it. The second one, I believe, was get at least 1 book out. And the third one was, I believe, do 1 more 3-marker Copic challenge. And I accomplished none of those. Absolutely none. Now you may say, presto, that's a failure of a year. But the fact of the matter is, you can make resolutions and have good intentions for it, and then things happen. And you have no idea they're going to happen in the start of the year, and sometimes it's more important to roll with the punches than, try to cling to something that you arbitrarily decided to do in the beginning of the year. This is actually old artwork, and in talking about what went off the rails last year, I think it's important to talk about what changed and why it was a good idea to change my plans. So this is old artwork. This is from Dismal Tide. The second book in our EastEnder regular series. And I've got a couple pieces from it here. And I think this art is about 4 years old, but this is still one of the best pieces I've done. But this was an exception for this particular book. Most of the art in this book was a little bit simpler than that. And actually, this is the same level of simplicity. It's just since the characters are more up in the foreground, they look a lot more simple. They look a lot more cartoony. And the reason I'm showing you these from my old books is that the big thing that changed my plans in 2019 was I decided to contact the publisher of Bexham's Bazaar magazine and try to get my artwork in a book and getting published monthly again. And I did. And my art is way better for it, because while all of these are good, they're very simple. There's a lack of detail. You could see in some drawings I wasn't even putting backgrounds. I often didn't know what to do or how to do it. Some of this stuff, like the drawing is well and good, but it still looks pretty static. And by my second month in doing Bexham's Bazaar and really pushing myself, I started doing line work like this. And you can see that there's a big difference. I started pushing myself to use darks and lights. I started adding texture to things. I started using darker shadows. I essentially pushed myself to stop being afraid of my pen. And I really was, when you look back at these older pieces. Again, this is really simple. There's, well, I mean, for how big this is, there's very little detail or shading in the face. This face is, what, like a third the size of this face. And you can see I've got more detail in the cheekbones. I've got a little more detail right above the eyebrow. I've simplified some of the lines. So I started adding a lot more detail to my art and focusing on contrast, on poses, because I mean, some of this stuff doesn't even have a good sense of action to it. And even some of my best work that really hits it out of the park, you know, I still really, really like this piece from Copper Knights and Granite Men. But, you know, even this, I don't have my now signature use of speed lines, which I went completely speed line crazy on this. There's speed lines everywhere. That's probably a little overboard. We'll go back to this one. There's more restrained use of speed lines there. You know, I've gotten a better sense of action. This was another one where it's like I didn't even know how to approach doing a background. There's a lot of detail on this armor, but the shading on it and the dents on it are kind of stiff. So there's a lot that could be improved in this piece, even though it's really good. So I started working on a deadline again, and I pushed my other arbitrary things aside. And one of those was not good to push aside. Getting a book out in 2019 really would have been good for me. And another thing about New Year's and looking back at your deadlines and your goals and everything like that is you should sit back. From this point on, by the way, I'm going to be showing artwork that I did in 2019. Some for Bexham's Bazaar, some for just our stuff and our books. I just want to have something to show you guys in the video. Here, I'll show these as well. Because doing the work for Bexham's Bazaar got me back into doing comics, which I hadn't done for a long, long, long time. So anyway, I was talking about looking back and seeing the mistakes you made. Now, with the Coloring the Challenger Foundation piece, I just put that off, and I even started working on it again pretty recently this month because I wanted to get it colored. But I'm just trying to prioritize my things, and Mike, probably rightfully, thinks that I phoned it in on Dart's costume. So he wants a redesign of Dart, and I'm saying that's not the priority right now. The priority is the Martian War Chronicles Days of Wrath book. So I'm prioritizing. I said I don't need to do that. Another thing with doing the 3 marker challenges is that I didn't want to be doing... I felt like I was doing a lot of things for videos in an attempt to just get an audience, and the 3 marker challenge is one of those. It's not that those kind of challenges aren't fun, but at the end of the day, they're not... How to put it? Well, one, when I limit myself to 3 colors, I'm limiting the color palette that I use on our characters, so it's not a good canon example of what the characters look like. And secondly, by limiting my color palette, I'm lessening my art if it's not a color palette that I would use anyway. And if I'm going to do artwork for something, I'd really prefer it be for something I want to publish or something that I'd feel good selling. I'm really trying to focus on being a professional and making my stuff look professional. So if it doesn't suit my immediate goals, I've been cutting it out. So I have been doing the Bexham's work, and I feel like that really, some of these are, you know, just little sketches and stuff like that. But I feel like I've really been focusing on that, and I need to get focused on doing books again as well. And I did make some progress towards getting Days of Wrath out. This is one of the illustrations that will be in Days of Wrath. But I think one of the big things I learned about this year is I think I set goals that are too big for myself. If I tell myself, well, I want to get all the illustrations done for a book. And sometimes I'll say I want to get all the illustrations I want done for a book in, you know, 1 month or 2 months. And I don't think very hard about how long each drawing is going to take me, or how much I'm going to have to research. One thing that really slows me down is actually designs and design work. You know, I'll say, oh, I'm going to sit down and do an illustration, and I don't even know, when I went into Martian War Chronicles, I'd never drawn the full tripod. I didn't know what a full tripod looked like. I'd drawn pieces of it here and there as I needed to, but I was really going on the fly with it. I'd sit down to draw a character, I wouldn't know what they were going to be wearing. I think I even do that in... this. I sat down to do this illustration, and I didn't know what kind of dress she was going to be wearing. And you're like, oh, you might think, oh, you can make that up on the fly, but you know what? You kind of can't. It's gonna turn out better if you have a plan. So one of the things, I have 2 resolutions for this year. And other things may come of those resolutions, but I think that making these general resolutions is going to turn out better for me and make me work more effectively. One of those resolutions is get faster. I did a lot of, like I said, I did a lot of work for Bexham's Bazaar this year. I'm really proud to have done a lot of work for Bexham's Bazaar this year. But sometimes I can get bogged down in the nitty-gritty details. And I think I've said once before that I'm very deadline-oriented. Whereas if you give me 10 days to do one drawing, I will happily spend 10 days on that one drawing. And I will continue to perfect that drawing and perfect that drawing and perfect that drawing. But if you give me 2 days to get the same drawing done, I will probably still get the drawing done, and I will just put less time into it, and it may not be that worse for wear from it. So I'm going to try to give myself smaller, tighter deadlines on things, and, you know, just walk away from it when I hit those deadlines. And I think I can keep my quality up, and I think that's important. So one thing is to, in general, try to work faster, and partially that will be by giving myself smaller deadlines. The other thing that I want to try to do this year, my resolution, if you will, is to shorten the amount of, not short, This isn't necessarily a go faster thing, but I used to look at my deadlines in increments of months, and I realized this year that that's too big an increment. You know, I jammed too much work in there, like too many. Or I should say, I jammed a month's worth of assignments in there on my list of things to do, and then if I didn't get to the bottom of the list, I wasn't even sure what I was doing with it. I wasn't assessing the work well. I wasn't breaking it into small enough chunks so that I could actually look at everything that I had to do as part of that assignment. So my goal, and I've been doing this more lately, is to break things up by week. For example, this week I wanted to get done, I wanted at least one of my Martian War Chronicles drawings to have, to be 75% done, or like have the two that I'm working on this week be, say, 50% done each. But I wanted to get, we'll say, at least 60% of one of those Martian War Chronicles drawings. I'll show what that one is. So this is what I've been working on this particular week. And I've also been coloring a piece for Martian War Chronicles as well. And as you can see, it's getting there, it's getting close. And then I wanted to get the thumbnails done for my Bexham's Bizarre standalone illustration and the next Imps comic. So I have to work on this or the other Martian War Chronicles drawing that I'm coloring today. I'm not quite up to where I want to be with them at the end of the night Sunday, but you know, I'm close. I have those thumbnails done, and for tomorrow I'm going to be making a new set of goals for myself, and I'm breaking it down. You know, I'm not saying, oh, I want 2 illustrations done. I'm trying to gauge what I need to do. And likewise, when I break it down into smaller tasks and parts like that, I can also sit down and factor in my my routine for it. I've shown it on here a bunch of times, so I'm not going to pull it up again, and I don't have it sitting around handy. But I did that public domain redesign, the Grimm's Fairy Tales for Skillful Brothers piece, and just drawing that page I did phenomenally on. I did that in 6.5 hours. I'm still not sure how I did that, but there was a lot of research that went into that. I didn't know what gunships in World War I looked like. I didn't know what, not World War I, I'm sorry. I didn't know what gunships in, like, right around the year 1900 looked like. I didn't know what uniforms, British Army uniforms might look like in that time. I didn't know a whole bunch of things, and I got myself frustrated because I didn't do the research for that. For this piece in particular, I had to figure out, the clothing styles for people and what clothes looked like back then and what they didn't look like back then. As a matter of fact, I think I took liberties anyway, because I have not seen a coat with a hood attached in any of my time period books. But when you're designing character design, sometimes you have to take liberties to make things look cool. And I think the hood looks cool, so I'm keeping it. But you had to make decisions like that. On that other piece, I was designing her dress. For this piece, I was looking up what rifles look like in the year 1300. This is another Beck's Bizarre piece. You know, for this piece of the Promethean, all the characters I'm showing you, by the way, are either from our Ascension Epoch universe of books, or they are our Ascension Epoch characters redesigned for medieval fantasy. So this one is canon. This is the Promethean from Copper Knights and Granite Men, but he's about 100 or 150 or so years younger than he is when he appears in that book. He's really old, folks. But you know, for this I had to look up the medical aprons from around the year 1900. You know, I had to look up what old electric switches look like back then. And that's research, and by breaking things down and thinking about them, I can factor in research and gathering references into my routine, and that generally makes me feel better and like I'm accomplishing more. And that may sound funny, but I think that that feeling that you're accomplishing something and making sure that you keep your tasks small enough that you can really, you know, feel like you're getting something done, instead of being like, oh, I didn't get this drawing done because you didn't realize that you were going to spend, you know, 2 hours trying to get yourself up on the equipment of the time or something like that. We're looking up how to draw medieval houses. We're picking out, you know, reference images of medieval churches to decide how best you want the base of your characters to look like. All of these things are super important, and they're all part of the creative process. So smaller chunks of time filled with the all of the parts of putting a drawing together, and a little bit of brainstorming and planning before I set my goals for the week is my other New Year's resolution. And I think that's going to make a big difference in my workflow. Now, you know, that's not to say I don't want to get a book out. I'm hoping we're going to have Martian War Chronicles out, you know, pretty soon. And I don't know if I have anything else in that book. Do I have anything else in this book interesting? I don't want you guys to get bored with just having one image. Here's an interesting one. Anyway, what I was saying is that doesn't mean I'm not setting other goals, because the truth of the matter is, yes, I do want to get another book out, and I think we're going to get Martian War Chronicles out, you know, soon, but I'm not looking at large chunks of things to say I'm going to do. I'm trying to be very short-sighted and progress further in steps, and, you know, really take things a week at a time. And I actually think that I will manage to produce more that way this year, actually. Another thing that I'd like to mention in assessing how my year went is that I put out 47 videos last year, and that's not including, I actually took 1 or 2 down, just because I spent a lot of time last year assessing what I wanted this channel to be. And that may sound like a strange statement, because it's like, Shell, your channel is what your channel is, but you know, or this is an art channel. And yes, this is an art channel, but last year I was just thinking I want to get a lot of subscribers, and I want to get a lot of hits and a lot of views, and I want this channel to be successful. And that was how I felt in the beginning of 2019. And that it didn't actually align with what my real goals in my heart were. I want this channel, obviously I draw on this channel, you know, this is an art channel. But I want this to be a creative channel, and I think I've been pushing it in that direction instead. One of the videos I took down was actually an art haul video. And it's not that I don't like art hauls, and it's not that I don't like channels that do art hauls. I totally watch channels that do art hauls and challenges and all that, and I like those videos. But, you know, I'm an artist and a writer, and my husband's a writer, and we have stories to tell, and our Ascension Epoch characters are important to us, and a lot of what I'm interested in, and probably you're interested in if you're here, is the craft of creating, of coming up with characters, of coming up with stories, of writing or drawing or making, you know, comics or illustrations that, you know, tell a story. You know, what's going on here? You know, this is a great example. We've got some kind of ghost or spirit, obviously in some sort of pain or agony above this very ordinary looking man who doesn't even seem to take notice of it. Well, what's the story there? So I always try to tell this bigger story in all of my illustrations. And I'm going to be doing a video on this piece, so subscribe to my channel if you want to know more about that one. But really and truly, I'm trying to create a channel that will honestly get people interested in my books, but also honestly that will help other creative spirits in their creative process. Even if you aren't a creator yourself, and even if you just like, you know, reading or looking at pictures, you know, if you're 100% a consumer, I still want you to be able to come here and enjoy seeing, you know, if you enjoy the creative process, if you enjoy the story behind the story, if you enjoy seeing how other people think when they create these things, I think that's the heart of my channel. That's what I want that to be. So I'm trying to stay away from more gimmicky things, and trying to stick to that. So yeah, I think that my goals have changed, and I think they've changed in a positive manner, and I have a better idea of what I'm looking at. And putting out 47 videos is a lot of work, and I didn't even realize that I did it until I checked this week. And that's, I think, a pretty big accomplishment that isn't entirely unaligned, I think, with my art goals. So yeah, all of that. By the way, this particular illustration is from this book, After Dark. It's the first East End Irregulars book. That's Torrent, and that's Cascade. And this is Torrent's alter ego, Sebastian Pereira. And this is not Cascade. This is Torrent's girlfriend, Evangeline Garver. So this is a scene where he's meeting his girlfriend from this book. This is another thing I did this year. We redid our cover for After Dark, and I've been trying to up my digital painting. And I did most of the digital painting in this. I probably did about 60% of it, but I did an entire video on that. But yeah, so those are my two goals. I'm, continuing in the direction on my YouTube videos. I don't have a set number of videos that I want to put out this year. We've also started, I'm going to say my husband started Attention Span Labs, but I am a regular guest over there, and that's more geared toward, there's some creative process stuff in there, but that's more geared toward, we'll say, nostalgia in a way. It's looking at things that we like and enjoy, and it looks at the modern states of things too, but we do things like look at action figures and old comic books and stuff on that channel, but that's also something I did creatively last year. So my New Year's resolutions are generally try to work faster and set more precise goals and a smaller deadline for myself. We're going weekly. And yeah, that's my whole thing. So hopefully you guys can see me attempt to do that in the new year. And you'll be here along with me, hopefully. I hope you guys subscribe. If you want to help out the channel, please like and leave a comment. Share this video, especially if you have friends who are creative or people that enjoy seeing the creative process. Please share it with them on social media and the like. And if you, I apologize if you hear a baby giggling in the background, but baby and daddy are wrestling and baby's having giggle fits over it. So if you want to know the stories behind some of these images, like I said, some of the stuff is from Bexham's Bizarre Magazine and the Imps comic runs in there, but all the regular Ascension Epoch stuff, is or will appear in our books. You can read some of our stories for free at heroicadventurefiction.com. And we're slowly putting a lot of our stories over there for free. We update it in a serial manner over there. So that's heroicadventurefiction.com, all one word, no spaces. Or you can head over to Amazon if you want to support us financially and buy our Ascension Epoch books over there. And then you get the whole package all at once. Of course, if you don't care about reading at all, which is your right, you can also help the channel financially through Subscribestar, one-time payment on PayPal. All of that stuff is in the description below. I would love to know your resolutions for the new year, especially your creative endeavors. So if you have any, please feel free to leave them in the comments. Keep drawing in the new year, or writing, or whatever creative endeavors you folks do. Have an awesome new year, but also have an awesome day, folks. Presto, over and out. So it's a new year, and that means more works have entered the public domain. January 1st was obviously another public domain day, and all works from 1924 are open to reproduction and making your own derivative works from them. So that's always exciting. Among the more notable things that are in the public domain now, I don't really pay attention to the films. As far as the books, another Tarzan book has entered the public domain in the United States. Obviously, if you live in other countries, you have to look at the terms of your public domain, or if the public domain even exists. But in the US, it totally does. The King of Elfland's Daughter, which is a very early and highly regarded fantasy novel is now in the public domain. And an interesting one is A. Milne's When We Were Very Young. This is notable because he's not called Winnie the Pooh in this book, and none of the other animals appear, but this is the first step in Winnie the Pooh finally entering the public domain. Now, I'm sure someone somewhere has a trademark on Winnie the Pooh, and I don't know what the terms are if on even calling him Winnie the Pooh in the book if he wasn't called Winnie the Pooh in When We Were Very Young. But this is you know, the first step toward the Winnie the Pooh material entering the public domain. So that's pretty interesting and something to keep an eye on. So yeah, also Gershwin stories or Gershwin songs have now begun entering the public domain, and there's actually a very, very interesting article at the bottom of web.law.duke.edu's Public Domain Day 2020, talking about specifically Gershwin and why it's particularly interesting that Gershwin's music is entering the public domain, and his trust's reasoning and efforts for not wanting his songs to be in the public domain. But I'll let you guys just pause and read that if you want to, or better yet, visit the site, because Duke's website on the public domain, I think, is quite fascinating, and clicking around in there is, well, very educational, but also they point out the usually most interesting things and highlights of what comes out in the public domain, because quite frankly, if you go to the actual catalog of copyright entries, there's thousands and thousands of things that are registered, and it's just going through lists and lists and lists. And it's actually quite interesting, all the things that we've lost access to, especially because of the you know, the Sonny Bono, or as they call it, the Mickey Mouse Extension Act, that prevented work from entering the public domain for so long. Anyway, that's my little spiel on that. If you are creative, you may want to check that out. Have an awesome day, folks, and an awesome new year. Presto, over and out.
Farewell and adieu to you, fair Spanish ladies.
Farewell and adieu to you, ladies of Spain.